think there are two aspects to any energy project. The first aspect is engineering, and the second aspect is the contractual framework to facilitate that engineering. What do I mean? Well, in order to fund the construction, development and construction of an energy project, you need a contractual framework comprising of agreements with government, utilities, lenders, the financing agreements, contractors to construct the project, and also contracts to operate the project. So essentially, the contractual framework is what is required in order to facilitate the actual physical engineering and construction of the project. So that's where the legal aspect sits alongside the engineering aspect. Oh, where to begin? I think there are opportunities in every single aspect of Africa's energy sector, simply because of the huge demand for power. I mean, the entire generating capacity of sub-Saharan Africa is approximately the same as that of Spain. And the population of Spain is circa 40 million, and the population of sub-Saharan Africa is in excess of 1 billion. So in terms of the energy deficit, it is vast. And that means that there are opportunities in the generation side, but let's not also forget the transmission side, because there's no point in generating power if it can't be transmitted to the consumers that need to use it. And in addition to transmission, once you get to a town, it needs to be distributed. So there's a whole supply chain: generation, transmission, distribution. And all of those offer opportunities for developers, lenders, and let's not forget governments themselves. The greater that they can enhance access to energy within their countries, the greater the rate of industrialization and economic growth. I think what African leaders need to remember is that they are competing for a pool of international investment. If it's too difficult to develop and finance a project in one country, developers and lenders are likely to look at another country where it's easier to do the project, because people want to do transactions. They want to develop the energy sector in Africa, but only if the country has a regulatory and economic environment that's conducive to it. And that may be that may require the government to take a look at the availability of foreign currency. Is it readily convertible? Is local currency readily convertible into foreign currency? Is it easy to repatriate? What are the fiscal incentives that are granted to a developer coming into the country? What sort of support is the government willing to provide? Because I think it's fair to say that not every government is particularly welcoming of independent power projects and private sector investment and development in their sectors. And again, as I said at the start, if a country is not particularly enthusiastic, there are other options for developers. I think this is a trend that we've been seeing over the past several years. And it's really been led by the fact that it's become more and more difficult to develop, finance, construct large-scale utility projects, largely because either the governments are unwilling to provide the necessary support, or the economics of large-scale projects don't currently work because the tariff requirements in the country in question are not cost-reflective in order to provide a suitable return. So that's sort of the background to why I think a lot of developers have decided to bypass the government utility and contract private sector to private sector. So for example, a developer setting up a power project that supplies a mining company. And because it's private sector to private sector, not including government, they generally tend to be concluded far quicker. On the flip side, that doesn't necessarily add to the country's development needs or address the country's development needs in relation to electrification, because all of these private sector to private sector projects generally follow a trend of pure commercial benefit to both parties. Whereas if the government in a country is able to develop and facilitate the development of utility scale projects, then that has a much greater national benefit. So I think the off-grid, non-utility scale projects have a role, but they're not a replacement for utility scale projects. And I think you'll see that there was a cycle of large-scale utility projects in Africa, utility-scale projects in Africa several years ago, and I think we will shortly be entering that cycle again.